Discipline. Before motivation, the proven path to consistency, success, and self-mastery, published by Midnight Audiobook. Introduction. Every dream has a silent enemy. It is not lack of talent, it is not bad luck, it is the habit of waiting to feel ready. Countless goals are abandoned, not because they were impossible, but because action became dependent on emotion. One day you feel energized, confident, and unstoppable. The next day that energy disappears, and so does your progress. Motivation is exciting, but it is unreliable. It arrives without warning, disappears without permission, and cannot be counted on when life becomes difficult. Discipline plays by different rules. It does not ask how you feel before it moves. It simply gets to work. That single difference separates lasting success from endless frustration. The people who achieve extraordinary results are not driven by constant inspiration. They have trained themselves to act when they are tired, distracted, uncertain, or unmotivated. They understand that every small action strengthens their future, while every excuse strengthens the habits holding them back. This book is about building that kind of discipline, not the harsh, joyless version that demands perfection, but the quiet strength that helps you keep promises to yourself. Real discipline is self-respect in action. It is choosing long-term growth over short-term comfort, even when no one is watching. It is the foundation of confidence, consistency, and genuine self-mastery. As you move through these chapters, you will learn practical strategies to overcome procrastination, build habits that last, strengthen your self-control, create systems that make success easier, recover quickly after setbacks, silence excuses, and develop the mindset of someone who follows through. These are not quick fixes or bursts of motivation. They are principles you can apply every day, regardless of your circumstances. The greatest reward of discipline is not achieving more, it is becoming someone you can trust, when your actions no longer depend on your mood. Your future is no longer controlled by chance. That is where real freedom begins, and it is where your transformation starts. Chapter 1. Why motivation always lets you down. Motivation has been given a job it was never designed to do. It is celebrated as the force behind achievement, praised as the answer to procrastination, and treated as the missing ingredient between dreams and results. Yet the very thing so many people depend on is the one thing they cannot control. Feelings change, energy shifts, and enthusiasm fades. When success depends on an emotion that comes and goes, progress becomes unpredictable. That is why so many goals begin with excitement and end with disappointment. A new routine feels easy during the first few days because motivation creates momentum. Everything seems possible. Waking up early feels rewarding. Healthy meals seem satisfying. Studying feels meaningful. The work itself appears lighter because emotion is temporarily carrying the weight. Then life returns to normal. The excitement fades, distractions reappear, and comfort becomes more appealing than effort. Nothing about the goal has changed, yet everything feels harder. The difference is simple: motivation has moved on. This is not a personal weakness, it is how the human mind works. Motivation is an emotional response, and emotions are naturally temporary. They are influenced by sleep, stress, confidence, relationships, health, environment, and countless experiences throughout the day. Some mornings you wake up full of energy. Other mornings, even simple tasks feel exhausting. Building your future on emotions is like building a house on shifting sand. No matter how strong the dream may be, an unstable foundation eventually creates unstable results. Motivation still has value. It often provides the spark that inspires change. It helps people start a new project, commit to a healthier lifestyle, or chase a long-forgotten ambition. The problem begins when that spark is expected to keep burning forever. Fire can start a journey, but it cannot always fuel the entire trip. Sooner or later, determination must replace excitement. That is where discipline enters. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many people picture endless willpower, harsh routines, or forcing themselves through misery. In reality, discipline is much simpler and far more practical. It is the decision to act according to your commitments instead of your current emotions. It is showing up because you decided that the work matters, not because you happen to feel inspired. Discipline does not eliminate discomfort. It teaches you that discomfort is not a reason to stop. This difference changes everything. Someone driven by motivation asks, "Do I feel like doing this today?" Someone guided by discipline asks, "What needs to be done today?" The first question gives emotions control over action. The second gives values control over action. One creates inconsistency. The other creates progress. Waiting to feel motivated often becomes procrastination wearing a more acceptable disguise. It sounds reasonable to say you will begin when you have more energy, more confidence, or a better mood. Yet those perfect conditions rarely arrive. Days become weeks. Weeks become months, and opportunities quietly disappear while the mind continues searching for the right feeling. The goal remains important, but action is constantly postponed. Over time, the habit of waiting becomes stronger than the desire to succeed. Discipline breaks this cycle by reducing the number of decisions you have to make. Instead of debating whether you should exercise, write, study, or practice, you simply follow the plan you already created. This removes the daily negotiation between your goals and your emotions. The less often you argue with yourself, the more energy you have to focus on doing the work itself. A university student named Aisha experienced this lesson while preparing for an important professional exam. During her first attempt, she studied only when she felt motivated. Some weeks, she spent hours reviewing material, while other weeks she barely opened a book because she was tired or distracted. Her effort was intense but inconsistent, and she failed the exam by a narrow margin. Determined to change, she abandoned the idea of waiting for inspiration. She created a simple routine of studying for 90 minutes every evening, whether she felt productive or not. Some sessions were excellent, others felt slow and frustrating. She kept showing up anyway. Months later, she passed the exam with confidence. The difference was not greater intelligence or stronger motivation. It was the quiet discipline of repeating small actions long after excitement had disappeared. Stories like this are common because success rarely arrives through dramatic moments. It grows almost invisibly through repetition. Every workout completed, every page written, every lesson studied, and every promise kept may seem insignificant on its own. Together, they shape a different future. Small actions repeated consistently become habits. Habits become character, and character determines the direction of a life. This is why consistency is more valuable than intensity. A single burst of effort may feel impressive, but it cannot compete with steady progress maintained over months and years. Extraordinary results are usually built through ordinary actions, repeated so often that they become part of who you are. The person who improves a little every day will almost always outperform the person who waits for the perfect moment to give everything at once. Something even more important begins to happen when you act consistently. You start building trust with yourself. Every time you keep a small promise, you send your mind a powerful message. I do what I say I will do. That trust becomes confidence. Not the confidence that comes from positive thinking, but the confidence earned through evidence. You no longer hope you will follow through because you have proven it to yourself repeatedly. Your identity begins to shift from someone who intends to act into someone who actually does. The future is shaped far less by occasional inspiration than by daily behavior. Every choice, no matter how small, quietly votes for the person you are becoming. Motivation may make those choices easier for a while, but discipline makes them reliable. And reliability is what turns goals into achievements. The real turning point comes when you stop asking whether you feel motivated and start asking whether you are committed. Motivation may open the first door, but it cannot carry you through every challenge waiting on the other side. Discipline can. It continues working on ordinary days, difficult days, and even the days when progress feels invisible. Motivation may help you begin, but discipline is what keeps you moving when motivation disappears. The next step is discovering how disciplined people develop that unwavering consistency, not by changing their feelings first, but by changing the way they see themselves. Chapter 2. The Discipline Mindset. Disciplined people do not face fewer temptations than everyone else. They simply refuse to let those temptations become their decision makers. Where an undisciplined mind asks, "What do I feel like doing right now?" a disciplined mind quietly asks, "What kind of person am I choosing to become?" That single shift in thinking changes every choice that follows. Every action begins long before the action itself. It begins with a decision, and every decision grows out of a belief. If you believe exercise is optional, you will find reasons to skip it. If you believe learning is only necessary when it is convenient, studying will always compete with entertainment. But when you believe that taking care of your health or improving your skills is simply part of who you are, the decision becomes much easier. The action is no longer something you have to convince yourself to do. It becomes a natural expression of your identity. This is why changing behavior without changing your thinking rarely lasts. Many people focus on changing habits while leaving their mindset untouched. They force themselves to wake up earlier, eat healthier, save money, or work harder. But deep down, they still see themselves as someone who lacks discipline. Eventually, their old identity pulls them back toward old behaviors. Lasting change cannot grow in soil that still supports old beliefs. When the mind remains the same, temporary improvements eventually give way to familiar patterns. True discipline begins with identity. Instead of saying, "I am trying to become disciplined," you begin saying, "I am someone who follows through." That may seem like a small difference in wording, but it creates a powerful difference in behavior. Identity becomes a filter through which every decision passes. A disciplined person asks, "What would someone like me do in this situation?" The answer is often clear. They do the workout because they are someone who values health. They finish the project because they are someone who keeps commitments. They save money because they are someone who thinks beyond today. Their choices are guided by who they believe they are becoming, not by how they happen to feel in the moment. This mindset also changes the way you view responsibility. It is easy to blame difficult circumstances, unfair opportunities, lack of support, or bad timing. Sometimes those challenges are real. Life is not equally easy for everyone. Yet discipline grows strongest when attention shifts away from what cannot be controlled and toward what can. A disciplined person does not waste energy arguing with reality. They ask, "Given the situation I have, what is the next right step?" That question turns obstacles into problems to solve instead of excuses to stop. Responsibility is often misunderstood as a burden, but it is actually one of the greatest sources of freedom. The moment you accept responsibility for your actions, you also accept the power to influence your future. If every result depends entirely on luck or other people, you have very little control over your life. But if your daily choices matter, then every day becomes another opportunity to move forward. Responsibility replaces helplessness with possibility. One of the simplest ways to strengthen this mindset is by keeping promises to yourself. Every promise carries weight, no matter how small it seems. Deciding to read for 20 minutes, take a morning walk, finish an important task, or avoid unnecessary distractions may appear insignificant on its own. Yet each time you follow through, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. You begin to believe your own words. That belief becomes self-respect. The opposite is equally true. Repeatedly breaking promises slowly weakens confidence. Every unfinished commitment quietly teaches the mind that your intentions cannot be trusted. Over time, doubt replaces certainty. You stop believing you will finish what you start because your own experience tells you otherwise. This is why confidence cannot be built through positive thinking alone. Confidence is evidence collected over time. It grows each time your actions match your commitments. Consider Daniel, who wanted to build a successful freelance design business after years of working in a job he no longer enjoyed. For a long time, he blamed his lack of progress on limited opportunities, demanding clients, and not having enough time after work. Although those challenges were real, they became the explanation for every delay. One evening, Daniel realized that his biggest obstacle was not his schedule, but his identity. He still thought of himself as someone who wanted success instead of someone who created it. Rather than chasing motivation, he adopted a simple principle. Every weekday, he would spend one focused hour improving his skills or finding new clients, regardless of how tired he felt. Some evenings that hour felt productive. Other evenings it felt painfully slow. He continued anyway because he had decided that this was simply what a professional did. Months later, his client list had grown steadily, and eventually he earned enough to leave his old job. His success was not created by one brilliant decision. It was built by hundreds of ordinary decisions that reflected a new identity. This is the quiet power of delayed gratification. The disciplined mind learns to trade immediate comfort for lasting reward. It understands that saying no to a distraction is really saying yes to a larger goal. Every disciplined choice may feel small in the moment, but together they create a future that impulsive decisions never could. The reward is not only external success, but also the deep satisfaction of becoming someone who lives according to principles instead of passing emotions. Long-term thinking transforms everyday choices. Instead of asking which option feels easiest today, disciplined people ask which option will make tomorrow better. They understand that every decision is an investment. Some investments produce comfort now, but create regret later. Others require effort today, but create freedom tomorrow. The disciplined mind learns to recognize this difference and chooses accordingly. At its core, discipline is not a collection of perfect habits. It is a way of thinking. It is believing that your identity matters more than your mood, that responsibility creates opportunity, and that self-respect is earned through consistent action. When you begin making decisions based on your principles instead of your emotions, discipline stops feeling like something you force. It becomes part of who you are, quietly shaping every choice and every result that follows. Chapter 3. Winning the battle inside your mind. Every meaningful decision is preceded by a quiet conversation that no one else can hear. One voice argues for comfort, certainty, and ease. The other calls for growth, responsibility, and progress. This conversation happens before you wake up early, before you begin an important project, before you exercise, before you make a difficult phone call, and before you choose between what is easy and what is right. Long before discipline becomes visible in your actions, it is tested in your thoughts. This inner conflict is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is part of being human. Your brain has two competing priorities. One is to help you grow by learning, improving, and adapting. The other is to keep you safe by avoiding unnecessary effort, uncertainty, and discomfort. Growth often requires stepping into the unknown, while safety prefers staying with what is familiar. The result is a constant mental tug-of-war between the life you want and the comfort you already have. The process usually follows the same pattern. A thought appears. That thought creates an emotion. The emotion influences a decision. The decision, repeated often enough, becomes a habit. A single thought, such as, "I'm too tired today," may seem harmless. But if that thought repeatedly determines your actions, it slowly shapes your identity. Eventually, what began as a passing feeling becomes a predictable pattern. Disciplined people are not free from these thoughts. They hear the same excuses, doubts, and fears as everyone else. The difference is that they do not automatically believe everything their minds tell them. They understand that thoughts are suggestions, not commands. Instead of reacting immediately, they create a small space between thinking and acting. Inside that space lies the freedom to choose. This ability becomes especially important because the brain naturally resists difficult tasks. Every new challenge demands mental energy. Learning a skill, solving a problem, writing a book, building a business, or changing a habit requires effort that the brain would often rather avoid. From an evolutionary perspective, conserving energy made sense. Today, however, that same instinct can quietly work against long-term goals. The mind mistakes unfamiliar effort for unnecessary danger, even when that effort leads to a better future. That is why resistance often appears just before meaningful work begins. You finally sit down to study, and suddenly checking your phone feels urgent. You open your laptop to write, and your mind reminds you of 10 smaller tasks that seem easier. You plan to exercise, but the couch suddenly feels unusually comfortable. These moments are rarely about laziness. They are expressions of the brain's preference for familiarity over growth. Overthinking makes this resistance even stronger. Instead of taking the first step, the mind tries to solve every possible problem before any action has been taken. It imagines failure, embarrassment, wasted effort, and disappointment. The task grows larger with every passing minute until it feels impossible to begin. Ironically, overthinking often creates the very delays that people hope to avoid. Fear quietly feeds this process. Fear of failure convinces you that trying is dangerous because you might not succeed. Fear of discomfort whispers that difficult work should always feel wrong. Self-doubt asks whether you are capable enough, disciplined enough, or talented enough to finish what you started. None of these thoughts arrive as obvious lies. They sound reasonable, which is exactly why they are so persuasive. Negative self-talk strengthens these fears over time. Statements like, "I never finish anything," "I'm just not disciplined," or "I always mess this up," slowly become mental habits. The brain begins treating these repeated thoughts as facts rather than opinions. Eventually, behavior starts matching the story you keep telling yourself. The problem is not simply the words, it is the identity those words reinforce. Another invisible challenge is decision fatigue. Every decision consumes mental energy, even small ones. By the end of a busy day, your ability to make thoughtful choices naturally weakens. This is one reason discipline becomes easier when routines are established. A planned routine removes unnecessary decisions. Instead of debating whether to do the work, you simply follow the schedule. Less mental negotiation means more energy for meaningful action. The encouraging truth is that you do not have to eliminate negative thoughts to become disciplined. You simply have to stop giving them complete authority. One helpful habit is learning to recognize thoughts without immediately identifying with them. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you notice, "I'm having the thought that I can't do this." That small shift creates distance. The thought still exists, but it no longer controls your next decision. Another powerful habit is focusing only on the next action instead of the entire journey. The mind becomes overwhelmed when it tries to complete months or years of work all at once. Yet it becomes surprisingly calm when the only goal is writing one paragraph, studying one chapter, making one phone call, or completing the next 10 minutes of focused work. Discipline grows through manageable actions, not impossible expectations. Accepting discomfort is equally important. Many people assume that feeling uncomfortable means they are doing something wrong. In reality, discomfort is often evidence that growth is taking place. Learning a new skill feels awkward. Building strength feels tiring. Changing habits feels unnatural. These feelings are not warning signs telling you to stop. They are reminders that you are moving beyond your previous limits. Sophia experienced this while preparing for her first marathon. She had never considered herself athletic and often quit exercise programs after a few weeks. Every training session began with the same thoughts. "You're too slow. You'll never finish. And skipping today won't matter." Instead of waiting for confidence to appear, she made one simple commitment. She would put on her running shoes and begin every scheduled workout, even if she only managed a short distance. Some runs felt strong, while others felt discouraging. She kept showing up anyway. As the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. Her confidence did not arrive before she acted. It grew because she acted. Crossing the marathon finish line was not the moment she became disciplined. She had become disciplined months earlier, each time she chose action over hesitation. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings about confidence. People often believe confidence comes first and action follows. In reality, the order is usually reversed. Action creates experience. Experience creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. Waiting until you feel ready often means waiting forever, because readiness is built through doing, not thinking. Every time you choose discipline over temporary emotion, you strengthen your mind. Every time you act despite doubt, resistance loses a little of its influence. Every time you finish what you promised yourself, your inner voice becomes more supportive and less fearful. Mental strength is not something you are born with. It is something you build through repeated decisions. The battle inside your mind never disappears completely, but it does become easier to win. Each disciplined choice teaches your brain that growth is safe, discomfort is temporary, and progress is possible. Slowly, the voice of commitment becomes louder than the voice of comfort. That inner victory lays the foundation for something even more powerful. The daily habits that transform disciplined thinking into an extraordinary life. Chapter 4. Small Habits, Extraordinary Results. Every successful life is quietly shaped by actions that seem too small to matter. A single page read, a short walk taken, 10 focused minutes of work, one healthy meal, one promise kept. None of these moments appear remarkable on their own, yet they possess a hidden power. Repeated often enough, they become the invisible force behind extraordinary achievements. Success rarely announces itself with dramatic changes. More often, it grows unnoticed through ordinary habits practiced day after day. This is why discipline becomes easier when it is built into your daily routine instead of depending on your daily emotions. Every decision requires mental energy. If you have to debate every workout, every study session, every writing hour, or every healthy choice, your mind eventually becomes tired. The more decisions you make, the greater the chance that comfort will win. Habits solve this problem by turning repeated choices into automatic behaviors. What once required effort eventually becomes part of your normal routine. Think about brushing your teeth. You probably do not spend several minutes deciding whether it is worth doing. You simply do it because the habit has become part of your identity and your daily rhythm. The same process can happen with exercise, reading, saving money, writing, learning, or any other meaningful behavior. At first, discipline feels like conscious effort. With enough repetition, it becomes something you simply do. The human brain is designed to conserve energy whenever possible. Once a behavior is repeated often enough, the brain creates shortcuts that allow the action to happen with less conscious thought. This is why the beginning of any new habit feels difficult. Your brain is building a new pathway. Every repetition strengthens that pathway until the behavior gradually requires less effort. Discipline is not becoming stronger every day because you are forcing yourself harder. It becomes easier because your brain is learning a new normal. This is also where the principle of compounding quietly changes everything. People often think progress should be obvious after a few days or weeks. When they do not see dramatic results, they become discouraged and stop. But meaningful growth rarely works that way. Small improvements accumulate beneath the surface before they become visible. Reading 10 pages each day may not seem life-changing this week, but over a year it becomes several thousand pages of knowledge. Saving a small amount of money each month may feel insignificant at first, but years later it represents financial stability. Practicing a skill for 30 minutes every day may appear ordinary, yet those hours quietly build expertise that others mistake for natural talent. The opposite is equally true. Small negative habits also compound over time. Skipping one workout changes very little. Skipping workouts for months changes your health. Ignoring one assignment may not seem important. Repeated procrastination shapes your performance and your opportunities. Eating one unhealthy meal is rarely a problem. Making poor choices every day gradually affects your energy, confidence, and well-being. The future is rarely determined by one major decision. It is usually shaped by hundreds of smaller ones that hardly seem important in the moment. One reason people struggle with habits is that they chase perfection instead of consistency. They believe one missed day means they have failed, so they abandon the habit altogether. In reality, perfection has never been the goal. Consistency is. Missing one day is a normal part of life. Illness, travel, unexpected responsibilities, and difficult seasons happen to everyone. The danger is not making a mistake. The danger is allowing one mistake to become a new pattern. Every disciplined person occasionally falls behind. The difference is how quickly they return. They do not waste time criticizing themselves or waiting for another wave of motivation. They simply begin again. They understand that one missed workout is an event. Quitting is a decision. One unfinished writing session is temporary. Giving up on becoming a writer is permanent. The habit is protected not by never making mistakes, but by refusing to let mistakes become excuses. Building habits also becomes easier when they are connected to your identity. Instead of trying to force yourself to perform disciplined actions, you begin acting in ways that match the person you want to become. A person who sees themselves as a healthy individual naturally looks for opportunities to move their body. A lifelong learner naturally finds time to read. A reliable professional finishes important work even when no one is watching. Identity turns habits from obligations into expressions of character. Another helpful approach is linking a new habit to one that already exists. A short stretching routine after brushing your teeth, reading a few pages after your morning coffee, reviewing your goals before opening your email, or writing for 20 minutes immediately after dinner makes new behaviors easier to remember. The familiar habit becomes a cue for the new one. Instead of relying on memory or motivation, your daily routine begins guiding your actions. These small routines create momentum. Momentum is one of discipline's greatest allies because action often makes the next action easier. A single productive hour increases the likelihood of another productive hour. Finishing one task creates energy to begin the next. Progress has a way of encouraging more progress. The hardest part is rarely continuing. It is starting. Ethan discovered this after deciding he wanted to write a novel. For years he waited for long stretches of free time and the perfect burst of creativity. Neither ever arrived. His unfinished ideas filled notebooks and computer folders, but no manuscript was completed. Eventually, he made one simple change. Instead of waiting for inspiration, he committed to writing just 500 words every morning before checking his phone or reading the news. Some mornings the words came easily. Others felt slow and awkward. He kept the habit anyway. 500 words seemed too small to make much difference, yet after a year he had completed an entire manuscript. Friends praised his discipline, but from Ethan's perspective, he had simply repeated one small habit often enough that writing became part of his daily life. This is how remarkable achievements are usually built. The outside world notices the finished book, the successful business, the healthier body, the promotion, or the impressive skill. What it rarely sees are the countless ordinary days that made those outcomes possible. Success is often the visible result of invisible routines repeated faithfully over time. There is something deeply encouraging about this truth. It means your future is not determined by occasional moments of greatness. It is shaped by the small choices available to you today. You do not need to transform your entire life overnight. You only need to repeat the next right action often enough that it becomes part of who you are. Every remarkable achievement begins as an ordinary habit that someone chose not to abandon. Each small, disciplined action is a vote for the future you want to create. Repeated consistently, those votes become a new identity, a stronger character, and a better life. The next step is learning how to design your routines and your environment so that discipline no longer depends on constant effort, but becomes the natural outcome of the systems you build around yourself. Chapter 5. Building systems that keep you consistent. Willpower is often treated as the foundation of success, yet it is one of the least reliable resources we possess. It changes with stress, sleep, emotions, and mental fatigue. Some days it feels limitless, while on others it seems to disappear before the day has even begun. Systems are different. They continue working whether you feel energetic or exhausted because they reduce the need to make the same difficult decision over and over again. This is one of the biggest differences between people who stay consistent and those who repeatedly start over. Consistent people do not spend every morning negotiating with themselves. They do not rely on feeling inspired before taking action. Instead, they build routines that quietly guide their behavior. Their success is not the result of extraordinary self-control every day. It is the result of creating a life where the right choice becomes the easiest choice. Goals certainly matter. They give you something to aim for. They provide purpose, direction, and a reason to begin. But goals alone cannot carry you very far. Reaching a goal is only a single moment in time. What happens after that moment depends entirely on the system that supports it. Someone may reach a target weight, complete a degree, finish writing a book, or build a successful business. Without a system that maintains those achievements, progress often fades and old habits quietly return. A system focuses on the process rather than the outcome. Instead of asking, "How do I lose 20 pounds?" it asks, "What routine makes healthy choices part of my daily life?" Instead of wondering how to write a book, it asks, "What writing schedule can I follow every week?" Goals define the destination. Systems determine whether you actually arrive and whether you stay there. One reason systems are so powerful is that they reduce decision fatigue. Every choice consumes a small amount of mental energy, deciding what to eat, when to exercise, which task deserves attention, whether to study now or later, or whether to check your phone before starting work may seem insignificant on their own. Yet hundreds of these small decisions quietly drain your ability to make disciplined choices later in the day. Think about how much easier life becomes when certain decisions are already made. If your workout time is scheduled, there is no daily debate. If healthy meals are prepared in advance, you are less likely to choose unhealthy alternatives out of convenience. If your most important work always begins at the same hour, you spend less energy deciding when to start. The routine makes the decision for you. This is why structured mornings often lead to productive days. A predictable routine creates momentum before distractions have a chance to take over. Instead of reacting to whatever demands your attention first, you begin the day according to your priorities. That simple shift gives you a sense of control that often carries into everything that follows. The environment around you also influences your behavior more than you may realize. People often blame themselves for lacking discipline while overlooking the constant messages their surroundings send. A cluttered desk invites distraction. A phone filled with notifications interrupts concentration. Unhealthy snacks left within easy reach quietly encourage poor eating habits. A television positioned at the center of the room naturally attracts attention long before your goals do. Changing your environment is often easier than changing your willpower. If your running shoes are placed beside the door, exercising requires less effort to begin. If books are kept where you regularly relax, reading becomes a more natural choice. If distracting applications are removed from your phone or social media is blocked during work hours, focus becomes easier because temptation is no longer constantly demanding your attention. These small adjustments may seem insignificant, yet they quietly shape hundreds of decisions over time. Good systems remove friction from productive habits while adding friction to harmful ones. The easier a positive behavior becomes, the more likely you are to repeat it. The more inconvenient a negative behavior becomes, the less often you will choose it. Discipline does not always require becoming stronger. Sometimes it simply requires becoming smarter about the environment you create. Planning ahead is another way of protecting discipline from emotion. When important decisions are made in advance, temporary feelings lose much of their influence. Instead of deciding each morning whether you will exercise, your calendar has already answered that question. Instead of wondering when you will work on a meaningful project, dedicated time has already been reserved. Planning transforms intentions into commitments. Time itself deserves the same level of planning. Without a schedule, important work often gets pushed aside by urgent but less meaningful tasks. Days become filled with activity, while the goals that truly matter receive whatever time happens to remain. Time blocking helps solve this problem by giving every important priority a specific place in your day. Rather than hoping you will eventually find time, you intentionally create it. Of course, no system works perfectly every day. Unexpected responsibilities, illness, travel, family obligations, and stressful seasons are part of life. The strongest systems are flexible enough to survive these challenges. Instead of demanding perfection, they provide a minimum standard that can be maintained even on difficult days. A shorter workout is still movement. Reading one page is still reading. Writing for 15 minutes is still writing. The goal is not maintaining ideal performance every day. The goal is protecting consistency until normal routines return. Maria learned this lesson while building her small online bakery. In the beginning, she relied entirely on motivation. Some weeks, she enthusiastically experimented with new recipes, updated her website, and contacted potential customers. Other weeks, she felt overwhelmed and accomplished almost nothing. Her business made little progress because her effort constantly changed. Eventually, she stopped depending on inspiration and designed a simple weekly system. Mondays were reserved for planning orders, Tuesdays for baking tests, Wednesdays for marketing, Thursdays for customer communication, and Fridays for reviewing finances. She also prepared ingredients the night before and organized her workspace so everything she needed was easy to access. The business did not grow overnight, but her consistency improved dramatically. Months later, steady routines had achieved what bursts of motivation never could. Her success was not built on extraordinary determination. It was built on ordinary systems repeated faithfully. This example reflects an important truth. Successful people are rarely successful because they possess endless willpower. They succeed because they eliminate unnecessary obstacles between themselves and the actions that matter. They know that discipline becomes easier when the environment supports their goals instead of competing with them. The purpose of a system is not to remove all challenges from life. It is to remove unnecessary ones. Every decision your routine makes for you is one less opportunity for hesitation, distraction, or emotional resistance. Over time, disciplined actions begin to feel less like difficult choices and more like a natural part of your day. Consistency is rarely the result of extraordinary effort. It is usually the result of ordinary systems working quietly in the background. When your routines are stronger than your excuses, discipline no longer depends on how you feel. It becomes the natural outcome of how you have designed your life. That foundation opens the door to the next challenge, learning how to stay disciplined when life becomes unpredictable and obstacles threaten to pull you off course. Chapter 6. Mastering Self-Control Every Day. Life is quietly shaped by decisions that rarely attract attention. Choosing to finish an important task instead of scrolling through your phone, preparing a healthy meal instead of reaching for convenience, saving money instead of spending it impulsively, or getting out of bed when the alarm rings may seem like ordinary moments. Yet these small choices gradually determine the direction of your future. Success is rarely decided in dramatic moments. More often, it is built through countless everyday decisions where comfort competes with commitment. This is where self-control becomes one of the most valuable skills a person can develop. Self-control is not about denying yourself every pleasure or living under strict rules that leave no room for enjoyment. It is not about becoming emotionally cold or constantly forcing yourself to suffer. At its heart, self-control is the ability to make choices that reflect your values instead of your passing impulses. It is choosing what matters most over what feels easiest in the moment. The challenge is that the human brain naturally prefers immediate rewards. From an evolutionary perspective, this tendency once helped people survive. Taking advantage of available food, rest, or safety made sense when resources were uncertain. Although the world has changed, the brain still responds quickly to anything that promises instant pleasure or relief. Social media offers immediate entertainment. Unhealthy food provides instant satisfaction. Procrastination offers temporary comfort by helping us avoid difficult work. The rewards arrive quickly, while the consequences appear much later. Long-term goals operate differently. Better health, financial freedom, professional success, stronger relationships, and personal growth require patience. Their rewards are delayed, sometimes by weeks, months, or even years. Because the benefits are not immediate, they often feel less emotionally compelling than distractions that provide pleasure right now. This is why discipline can feel difficult at first. It asks you to value tomorrow's reward more than today's comfort. Fortunately, self-control is not a personality trait reserved for a fortunate few. It is a skill that grows with practice. Just as muscles become stronger through repeated exercise, self-control becomes stronger through repeated decisions. Every time you choose the action that supports your future instead of the impulse that serves only the present, you strengthen your ability to make that choice again. This does not mean you will never feel tempted. Temptation is part of being human. Disciplined people experience the same desires, distractions, and emotional struggles as everyone else. The difference is that they learn to pause before reacting. Instead of allowing every impulse to become an action, they create a brief moment of awareness. In that small space between feeling and responding, better decisions become possible. Many impulses lose their power when they are not acted on immediately. A craving often fades after a few minutes. The urge to avoid difficult work becomes weaker once you begin. The desire to check your phone decreases when your attention becomes absorbed in meaningful work. Self-control is not about eliminating impulses. It is about refusing to let them make your decisions. Emotional discipline plays an important role in this process. Emotions themselves are neither good nor bad. They provide valuable information about our experiences, but they are not always reliable guides for our behavior. Frustration may encourage you to quit. Anxiety may convince you that you are not ready. Boredom may tempt you to abandon a valuable habit. Acting on every emotion creates an unpredictable life because emotions constantly change. Emotional discipline allows you to acknowledge your feelings without giving them complete authority. This ability becomes easier when your decisions are guided by principles rather than moods. A person who values honesty tells the truth even when it feels uncomfortable. Someone who values health continues exercising even on days when motivation is low. A writer who values growth keeps writing despite occasional self-doubt. Principles provide stability because they remain consistent even when emotions fluctuate. Every disciplined choice also creates momentum for the next one. One healthy meal makes it easier to choose another. One focused work session makes it easier to continue concentrating. One evening spent reading instead of mindlessly scrolling strengthens the habit of intentional living. These decisions may seem isolated, but together they reshape your identity. Each choice quietly reinforces the belief that you are someone who follows through. This is why repetition matters so much. Self-control is strengthened not through rare moments of extraordinary determination, but through ordinary moments repeated consistently. Every time you pause before acting on an impulse, you are training your mind. Every time you choose your priorities over your distractions, you are building mental resilience. Progress may feel invisible at first, but each decision adds another layer of strength. Consider Noah, who struggled for years with constant digital distractions. He wanted to complete an online certification that would help him advance in his career. Yet every evening he found himself spending hours watching videos and browsing social media. He repeatedly promised himself that tomorrow would be different, but the pattern never changed. Instead of trying to rely on stronger willpower, Noah focused on one small decision. Each evening, he placed his phone in another room before beginning his study session. He committed to studying for just 45 uninterrupted minutes before checking any notifications. The first few weeks felt uncomfortable. His mind constantly wanted to reach for his phone, even when it was not nearby. Gradually, the urge became less intense. The focused study sessions became part of his routine, and completing them felt more satisfying than endless distraction. Months later, he earned his certification and secured a promotion. The biggest transformation was not simply his career. It was his growing confidence that he could control his attention instead of allowing his attention to be controlled by every impulse. Noah's experience highlights an important truth. Self-control is rarely built through dramatic acts of determination. It grows through repeated moments of choosing what matters over what is merely convenient. Every small victory makes the next one slightly easier because the mind begins to expect disciplined behavior rather than impulsive reactions. There is also an important difference between temporary deprivation and purposeful choice. People often assume discipline means constantly saying no. In reality, discipline allows you to say yes to something much greater. Saying no to unnecessary distractions means saying yes to deeper focus. Saying no to impulsive spending means saying yes to financial freedom. Saying no to short-term comfort means saying yes to long-term fulfillment. Self-control is not about losing opportunities. It is about protecting the opportunities that matter most. As these choices accumulate, something remarkable happens. Discipline begins to feel less like a struggle and more like part of your character. The habits that once required constant effort become increasingly natural. Confidence grows because you repeatedly prove to yourself that your actions can be trusted. Freedom grows because your life is no longer controlled by every passing emotion or impulse. Every decision, no matter how small, is quietly shaping the person you are becoming. The future is built one choice at a time, and each disciplined action strengthens your ability to make the next one. That truth becomes especially important when life doesn't go according to plan, because lasting discipline is measured not by never falling, but by learning how to rise again after failure. Chapter 7. Discipline in the face of failure. Every worthwhile goal comes with obstacles that cannot be avoided. Plans fall apart, mistakes happen, progress slows, and unexpected setbacks appear without warning. These moments are not interruptions to the journey of discipline. They're part of it. Anyone can stay committed when everything is working. The real test of discipline begins when effort does not immediately produce the results you hoped for. Failure carries a reputation that it does not deserve. It is often treated as proof that someone lacks talent, intelligence, or potential. In reality, failure usually means something much simpler. It means you attempted something difficult enough that success was not guaranteed. Every meaningful pursuit involves uncertainty, and uncertainty always creates the possibility of setbacks. Trying to avoid failure often means avoiding growth altogether. This is where the paths of motivated people and disciplined people begin to separate. Someone who depends on motivation often sees failure as a signal to stop. The emotional excitement that fueled the beginning quickly disappears when progress becomes difficult. Disappointment turns into self-doubt, and self-doubt slowly becomes inaction. Before long, the goal is abandoned, not because it was impossible, but because one setback was mistaken for a final answer. A disciplined person sees the same setback through a different lens. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" That simple shift changes everything. The focus moves away from blame and toward learning. Energy is no longer spent wishing the mistake had never happened. It is invested in understanding what can be done better next time. This approach reflects an important principle of psychology. The brain naturally wants to protect us from emotional pain. After experiencing failure, it often encourages us to avoid similar situations in the future. If giving a presentation went poorly, avoiding public speaking feels safer. If a business idea failed, starting another one seems risky. If a fitness routine was abandoned, trying again may feel pointless. Although this response is understandable, it also limits growth. Avoiding failure may protect your emotions for a moment, but it also prevents future success. Perfectionism quietly makes this problem worse. Many people believe discipline means never making mistakes. They set unrealistic standards for themselves and expect flawless performance from the beginning. When reality fails to match those expectations, disappointment quickly replaces determination. One missed workout becomes evidence that the entire routine has failed. One unhealthy meal turns into a weekend of poor choices. One difficult week becomes an excuse to abandon months of progress. Discipline offers a healthier perspective. It does not demand perfection. It asks for persistence. A disciplined person understands that mistakes are temporary events, not permanent identities. Missing one day does not erase months of consistent effort. Making one poor decision does not define your character. What matters is the response that follows. This is why consistency will always be more valuable than perfection. Imagine someone who exercises 4 days each week for an entire year, but occasionally misses a session because of illness or travel. Compare that with someone who exercises intensely for 2 perfect weeks before quitting completely. The first person achieves lasting results because they value returning more than they value being flawless. Long-term success belongs to those who keep going, not those who never stumble. Emotional resilience plays an important role in this process. Resilience is not the absence of disappointment, frustration, or discouragement. It is the ability to experience those emotions without allowing them to decide your future. Disciplined people acknowledge setbacks honestly. They may feel frustrated after a mistake or discouraged by slow progress. What they refuse to do is let those feelings become permanent conclusions about themselves. One of the healthiest habits you can develop is separating your actions from your identity. Failing at a task does not make you a failure. Struggling with consistency does not mean you are incapable of discipline. A mistake describes something you did. It does not define who you are. This distinction protects confidence while still allowing room for honest self-improvement. Recovery is often more important than performance. Every person pursuing meaningful goals will eventually experience difficult days. Illness, unexpected responsibilities, emotional stress, financial challenges, and personal setbacks are part of life. What separates disciplined individuals is not their ability to avoid these experiences, but their determination to return after them. They recover quickly because they refuse to let temporary interruptions become permanent excuses. Patience also becomes essential during long-term progress. Many goals require far more time than people initially expect. Learning a language, building a business, improving physical health, writing a book, or developing financial security often takes years of steady effort. During that time, progress may appear frustratingly slow. Without patience, temporary setbacks feel much larger than they really are. With patience, they become small chapters in a much longer story. Olivia experienced this while building her photography business. She loved taking photographs, but turning her passion into a career proved much harder than she imagined. Several clients cancelled at the last minute. Some months brought almost no income, and early marketing efforts attracted little attention. There were moments when she questioned whether she had chosen the wrong path. Instead of giving up, Olivia treated every disappointment as feedback. She improved her editing skills, learned more about communicating with clients, refined her pricing, and continued sharing her work consistently online. Progress remained slow, but it never stopped. Over the next few years, satisfied clients began recommending her to others. Her portfolio grew stronger, and her business became stable. Looking back, she realized that no single breakthrough changed her career. It was her willingness to keep improving after each setback that made the difference. Olivia's story illustrates a truth that appears in nearly every field of achievement. The people we admire are rarely those who never failed. They are the ones who refuse to let failure have the final word. Their confidence was not created by constant success, but by repeatedly proving that setbacks could not stop them. Every challenge contains two possible outcomes. It can become evidence that you should quit, or it can become experience that helps you grow. The event itself does not determine which outcome becomes true. Your response does. Discipline teaches you to see obstacles as temporary, mistakes as teachers, and delays as opportunities to become wiser and stronger. There will always be moments when progress feels slower than expected, and the temptation to give up feels unusually strong. Those moments do not erase the work you have already done. They simply ask whether your commitment is deeper than your disappointment. Every time you choose to continue, you strengthen your resilience and build a character that cannot be shaped by temporary failures. Discipline is never revealed by perfect performance or an uninterrupted path to success. It is revealed by the quiet determination to stand up, learn, adjust, and move forward every time life knocks you down. That same determination becomes essential in another battle almost everyone faces, because many dreams are not destroyed by failure, they are delayed by hesitation. In the next chapter, you will discover how disciplined action defeats procrastination before it has the chance to steal your future. Chapter 8. Beating Procrastination for Good. Procrastination rarely begins with a lack of ambition. In fact, the people who procrastinate the most often care deeply about the goals they keep postponing. They dream of writing the book, building the business, improving their health, learning a new skill, or creating a better future. The problem is not that they want too little, it is that they wait too long for the right feeling to begin. Discipline starts where waiting ends. Procrastination is often misunderstood as laziness, but laziness and procrastination are not the same thing. Laziness is a lack of willingness to act. Procrastination is the decision to delay action even when you know it matters. That delay is rarely random. It is usually an attempt to avoid discomfort. Difficult tasks bring uncertainty, effort, and the possibility of failure. The brain naturally looks for something easier and more immediately rewarding. Checking your phone, organizing your desk, watching another video, or convincing yourself that tomorrow will be a better day provides temporary emotional relief. The task disappears for a while, but the anxiety remains. This is why procrastination often feels good in the moment and terrible afterward. Delaying the work gives your mind a brief sense of comfort, yet as time passes, unfinished responsibilities continue occupying your thoughts. Deadlines move closer, pressure increases, confidence decreases. What began as a small delay gradually becomes a heavy mental burden. The longer you wait, the more intimidating the task appears. Fear is often hiding beneath this pattern. Fear of failure whispers that your effort might not be good enough. Fear of making mistakes convinces you that beginning is dangerous because you could get something wrong. Perfectionism raises the standard so high that starting feels impossible. Uncertainty makes every decision seem risky because you cannot predict exactly how things will turn out. These fears rarely announce themselves openly. Instead, they quietly disguise themselves as reasonable excuses to wait a little longer. Overthinking gives these fears room to grow. Instead of taking one simple step forward, the mind begins imagining every possible challenge that could appear. It analyzes every detail, searches for the perfect strategy, and tries to eliminate all uncertainty before any action is taken. Unfortunately, certainty is rarely available at the beginning of meaningful work. The attempt to think through every possibility creates hesitation, and hesitation slowly becomes a habit. The mind has an interesting way of exaggerating unfinished work. A project that might require only 30 minutes can feel overwhelming after days of postponement. The longer it remains unfinished, the larger it appears. This is one reason procrastination feeds itself. Delay creates anxiety. Anxiety makes the task seem more difficult, and the increased difficulty encourages even more delay. Breaking this cycle requires something surprisingly simple. You must begin before your mind feels fully prepared. Action changes the conversation inside your head. Before you begin, uncertainty dominates your thinking. Once you start, clarity gradually replaces confusion. Problems that seemed impossible often become manageable because you're finally working with reality instead of imagination. Confidence also begins to grow, not because the task suddenly becomes easy, but because every completed step provides evidence that progress is possible. This is why the first step matters so much. It does not have to be impressive. It simply has to exist. Opening the document, writing one paragraph, studying one page, making one phone call, or walking for 10 minutes may seem insignificant compared to the larger goal. Yet these small actions create movement, and movement creates momentum. Once the mind shifts from thinking to doing, continuing becomes much easier than starting. Large goals become less intimidating when they are broken into smaller pieces. A book is written one page at a time. A degree is earned one class at a time. A healthier body is built one workout at a time. A successful business grows one customer at a time. Looking only at the final destination often creates unnecessary pressure. Focusing on the next manageable action keeps the task within reach. Distractions make procrastination even more difficult to overcome because they offer instant rewards with almost no effort. Every notification, video, message, or unnecessary interruption competes with work that demands concentration and patience. The brain naturally moves toward whatever feels easier. This is why disciplined people do not simply rely on stronger self-control. They intentionally remove distractions before beginning important work. They understand that protecting their attention is often more effective than constantly fighting temptation. Another important lesson is that completion is far more valuable than perfection. Many projects remain unfinished because people become trapped trying to make every detail flawless. They rewrite the same paragraph repeatedly. Postpone launching an idea until everything feels perfect, or spend weeks preparing for work that could have begun much earlier. Progress slows because perfection becomes more important than completion. Perfection is an impossible standard because there will always be something that could be improved. Growth, however, comes from finishing, learning, adjusting and improving over time. Every completed project provides experience that no amount of planning can replace. The disciplined person understands that imperfect action almost always creates better results than perfect intentions. Ryan experienced this while preparing to start his own online tutoring business. For nearly a year, he researched teaching platforms, redesigned his website countless times, and watched endless videos about marketing strategies. He told himself he was preparing, but in reality, he was avoiding the discomfort of putting his work in front of real people. One day, he made a simple decision. Instead of trying to perfect everything, he would spend 1 hour each day contacting potential students and improving only one part of his business afterward. The first conversations felt awkward, and not everyone responded positively. Even so, he continued. As weeks passed, he gained paying students, improved his teaching through real experience, and discovered that many of the problems he had worried about never happened at all. His biggest breakthrough was not finding the perfect strategy. It was replacing endless preparation with consistent action. Ryan's story reflects a principle that applies to nearly every goal. Clarity is earned through movement, not endless thinking. Confidence grows from experience, not from waiting. Momentum belongs to those who are willing to begin before every doubt has disappeared. The truth is that disciplined people do not possess a magical ability to avoid discomfort. They simply stop treating discomfort as a reason to delay. They understand that nervousness, uncertainty, and imperfection are normal companions at the beginning of meaningful work. Instead of trying to eliminate those feelings first, they move forward with them. In time, the emotions lose their power because action becomes stronger than hesitation. Every day presents countless opportunities to choose between delay and progress. Those choices may seem small, but they quietly shape your future. Each time you begin despite uncertainty, you weaken the habit of procrastination and strengthen the habit of discipline. Every completed task reminds you that action, not overthinking, is what creates meaningful change. Progress always begins at the exact moment. Action replaces hesitation. The future does not belong to those who wait for the perfect mood, the perfect plan, or the perfect time. It belongs to those who are willing to take the next small step today. That daily commitment to action is the foundation of lasting discipline, and in the next chapter you will discover how simple daily habits transform that commitment into a way of life. Chapter 9. The Daily Habits of Highly Disciplined People. A person's future is usually hidden inside their schedule long before it appears in their results. The way you spend an ordinary Tuesday morning often reveals more about where your life is headed than the goals written in a notebook or the promises made at the beginning of the year. Every repeated action leaves a small mark on your character, and over time, those marks become the person you are. This is why discipline should never be measured by occasional moments of determination. A single productive day can feel exciting, but it changes very little by itself. Real transformation happens when productive days become productive weeks become productive months, and those months quietly shape an entirely different life. Discipline is not an event. It is a lifestyle built one routine at a time. Highly disciplined people understand something that many others overlook. They know that every unnecessary decision drains a little mental energy. Deciding whether to wake up early, whether to exercise, whether to begin an important project, or whether to keep scrolling through social media may seem harmless, but these constant choices slowly exhaust the mind. Eventually, the easiest option begins to look like the best one. Daily habits solve this problem. Instead of asking what they feel like doing, disciplined people simply follow the routines they have already chosen. Their habits remove uncertainty because many important decisions have already been made. The routine becomes a quiet guide that carries them forward, even on days when enthusiasm is nowhere to be found. One of the clearest examples of this mindset appears at the beginning of the day. Rather than allowing emails, notifications, or unexpected demands to immediately take control, disciplined people create a deliberate start to their morning. Some spend time exercising, others read, write, review their goals, or simply sit in silence before the day becomes busy. There is no universal morning routine because every life is different. What they all have in common is intention. They begin the day by choosing their direction instead of reacting to whatever demands their attention first. That same intention continues throughout the day. Disciplined people rarely confuse activity with progress. They understand that a calendar full of tasks does not automatically produce meaningful results. Before the day's distractions arrive, they identify the work that truly deserves their attention. Important responsibilities are given a place in their schedule instead of being left to chance. This simple habit prevents urgent but unimportant tasks from stealing the time needed for long-term goals. Protecting time becomes one of their greatest strengths. They understand that every interruption has a hidden cost. Even a quick glance at a notification or an unnecessary conversation can break concentration and make it difficult to return to meaningful work. Rather than constantly trying to rebuild focus, they protect it from being lost in the first place. They know that attention is limited, so they spend it carefully. Deep focus has become increasingly valuable because distraction has become increasingly common. The ability to work without constantly switching between messages, videos, and notifications allows disciplined people to accomplish more in 2 focused hours than others accomplish during an entire distracted day. They do not possess greater intelligence. They simply create conditions where their attention can remain on what matters. Physical well-being also supports mental discipline in ways that are easy to overlook. Lack of sleep weakens judgment. Poor nutrition reduces energy. Constant stress shortens attention and increases emotional reactions. Disciplined people recognize that caring for their bodies is not separate from achieving their goals. The body supplies the energy and the mind directs it. When one suffers, the other eventually follows. Learning is another habit that quietly compounds over time. Highly disciplined people remain students regardless of their age or success. They read books, listen carefully to experienced people, develop new skills, and stay curious about the world around them. They understand that knowledge grows slowly but creates enormous advantages over time. They are not searching for one life-changing lesson. They are collecting small insights that gradually improve their thinking and decision-making. Reflection is equally important. At the end of each day, disciplined people often pause long enough to notice what went well and what needs improvement. This is not about judging themselves harshly or searching for mistakes. It is about remaining aware. Reflection keeps small problems from becoming permanent habits because adjustments happen regularly instead of months later. Life, however, is never perfectly predictable. Busy schedules, family responsibilities, illness, travel, and unexpected challenges interrupt even the best routines. The difference is that disciplined people do not treat these interruptions as reasons to quit. They simplify their habits when necessary, but they rarely abandon them. If they miss a workout, they return the next day. If they skip reading for a few evenings, they pick up the book again without guilt. They understand that consistency is protected by returning quickly, not by never making mistakes. They also recognize the value of recovery. A disciplined life is not built by working without rest until exhaustion takes over. Sustainable success requires energy, and energy requires recovery. Quality sleep, meaningful relationships, quiet moments of reflection, and time away from work allow the mind to remain sharp and focused. Rest is not a reward earned after discipline. It is one of the habits that makes discipline possible. Consider Eleanor, a financial analyst who constantly felt overwhelmed despite working long hours. Her days were filled with meetings, emails, and urgent requests, leaving little time for the projects that mattered most. She believed she simply needed to work harder, but harder never solved the problem. Eventually, she redesigned her daily routine instead of increasing her effort. Every morning began with 90 minutes of uninterrupted work before opening her inbox. She prepared her priorities the evening before, scheduled short breaks throughout the day, exercised after work, and spent 20 minutes reading before bed instead of scrolling through her phone. None of these habits seemed extraordinary on their own. Yet 6 months later, she completed major projects ahead of schedule, felt less stressed, earned a promotion, and found more time for her family. The greatest change was not her workload. It was the structure of her days. That is how discipline quietly transforms a life. Not through one extraordinary decision, but through hundreds of ordinary decisions repeated until they become automatic. Habits remove the need to constantly negotiate with yourself because they replace intention with action. Eventually, doing the right thing begins to feel more natural than avoiding it. Your future is not waiting somewhere in the distance. It is taking shape today, one routine at a time. Every habit you repeat is casting a vote for the person you are becoming. When your daily actions consistently reflect your highest priorities, success stops feeling unpredictable and begins to feel inevitable. The final obstacle is learning to silence the excuses that try to interrupt those routines, because discipline grows strongest when excuses no longer have the power to decide your actions. Chapter 10. Creating a Life Without Excuses. Excuses become dangerous not because they are obviously false, but because they often contain just enough truth to feel completely reasonable. They offer comfort without requiring change, protect pride without solving problems, and allow us to explain today's inaction while quietly borrowing opportunities from tomorrow. The more convincing an excuse becomes, the easier it is to mistake it for reality. The human mind is naturally drawn to explanations that reduce emotional discomfort. Admitting that we avoided an important task, wasted valuable time, or failed to follow through on a commitment can be uncomfortable. It is far easier to point toward a busy schedule, difficult circumstances, bad timing, or other people. Sometimes those challenges are genuine. Life is not equally fair or equally easy. Yet discipline begins when we stop asking whether our reasons are understandable and start asking whether they are helping us move forward. This is an important distinction because there is a meaningful difference between an explanation and an excuse. An explanation acknowledges reality. An excuse surrenders to it. An explanation says, "This obstacle made progress more difficult." An excuse quietly concludes, "Because of this obstacle, progress is impossible." One recognizes a challenge while continuing to search for solutions. The other uses the challenge as permission to stop trying. Disciplined people are not successful because they encounter fewer problems. They succeed because they refuse to give problems the final word. Their first instinct is not to search for someone or something to blame. Instead, they ask a simple question: what can I do next? That question shifts attention away from frustration and toward action. It transforms helplessness into responsibility. Responsibility is often misunderstood. Some people hear the word and imagine constant self-criticism or carrying the weight of every mistake forever. True responsibility is something very different. It is the willingness to own your choices without attacking your worth. It allows you to say, "I made a mistake," without believing, "I am a mistake." That distinction creates room for both honesty and growth. There is also an important difference between living with a victim mentality and living with a growth mindset. A victim mentality focuses almost entirely on circumstances outside personal control. It asks why life is unfair, why opportunities seem limited, or why success comes more easily to someone else. While these observations may sometimes be accurate, they rarely create progress. A growth mindset acknowledges that unfairness exists, but refuses to let it become the final explanation. It asks what can still be learned, improved, or changed, despite the difficulty. This perspective does not deny hardship. Some people begin with fewer resources, face unexpected setbacks, or carry responsibilities that others do not. Pretending these challenges do not exist is neither realistic nor helpful. Discipline simply asks a different question. Instead of focusing only on what is missing, it focuses on what remains possible. Even when circumstances cannot be changed immediately, choices still can. That is why self-accountability is such a powerful habit. Accountability means becoming someone who tells the truth to themselves. It means recognizing when you have delayed important work, allowed distractions to take over, or broken promises you made to yourself. Honest self-reflection is not comfortable, but it is freeing because it places the power to improve back in your own hands. Complaints often move us in the opposite direction. They create the feeling of progress without producing any actual change. Complaining may provide temporary emotional relief, but it rarely improves a difficult situation. Disciplined people spend less time describing what is wrong and more time deciding what they can do about it. They understand that solutions, even imperfect ones, are almost always more valuable than endless frustration. This habit of looking for solutions gradually strengthens confidence. Confidence is not built by convincing yourself that everything will be easy. It grows when you repeatedly prove that you can respond effectively to challenges. Every time you accept responsibility for a difficult situation instead of avoiding it, you collect evidence that you are capable of handling future problems as well. Personal integrity also grows through responsibility. Integrity is created when your actions consistently match your words. Every promise you keep strengthens that relationship. Every promise you repeatedly break weakens it. This applies not only to promises made to other people, but also to promises made privately to yourself. Deciding to wake up early, exercise, study, save money, or complete meaningful work may seem like personal commitments that affect no one else. Yet every time you follow through, you reinforce the belief that your own word has value. Disciplined people understand that excuses quietly damage this relationship. Every excuse teaches the mind that commitments are optional whenever circumstances become uncomfortable. Over time, this pattern weakens self-trust. The opposite is equally true. Every responsible decision tells your mind that your commitments matter, even when they require effort. This is how integrity becomes part of your identity, rather than simply an ideal you admire. Consider Hassan, who dreamed of starting a small home repair business after years of working for someone else. For a long time, he blamed his lack of progress on the economy, limited savings, and not having enough experience to compete with established companies. Although those concerns were understandable, they also kept him from taking meaningful action. Eventually, he decided to stop measuring his progress by the challenges he faced and start measuring it by the actions he controlled. He spent 1 hour every evening improving his business skills, saved a small portion of every paycheck, contacted potential customers on weekends, and asked satisfied clients to recommend him to others. None of these actions removed the difficulties he faced, but they steadily reduced their influence. Within 2 years, he had built enough consistent work to leave his job and run his own business full-time. Looking back, he realized that his greatest obstacle had not been limited resources. It had been the habit of waiting for perfect conditions before taking responsibility for what he could already do. Stories like Hassan's remind us that responsibility does not instantly eliminate obstacles. It changes something even more important. It changes the way we respond to them. The moment responsibility replaces blame, energy begins flowing towards solutions instead of excuses. Progress becomes possible because attention is directed toward actions that can actually improve the situation. There is great freedom in accepting responsibility without becoming harsh toward yourself. Every person makes mistakes. Every person experiences setbacks. Discipline does not require pretending those moments never happened. It simply refuses to let them become permanent identities or lifelong excuses. You can acknowledge yesterday's failures while still taking ownership of today's decisions. The future is shaped far less by the problems you encounter than by the way you respond to them. Excuses may protect your comfort for a few moments, but they quietly surrender control of your future. Responsibility does the opposite. It may ask more of you today, but it gives you far greater influence over tomorrow. The moment you stop searching for excuses is the moment you begin reclaiming your power, because that is the moment your future once again becomes something you can shape through your choices. And once you understand that principle, you begin to see that discipline is not limited to one goal or one habit. It becomes a force that improves every important area of your life. Chapter 11. Discipline creates success everywhere. The quality of a life is rarely determined by one extraordinary decision. It is revealed through the small choices repeated across work, health, relationships, finances, and the countless ordinary moments that fill each day. These areas may appear separate, yet they are deeply connected by one invisible thread. The habits that shape your character in one part of life almost always influence every other part as well. This is why discipline is far more than a strategy for reaching goals. It is a way of living that quietly improves everything it touches. Many people think of discipline only in terms of achievement. They associate it with building a business, earning a promotion, completing a degree, or reaching a fitness goal. While discipline certainly makes those accomplishments possible, its influence extends much further. The same ability to keep a promise to yourself at work is the ability to keep a promise to someone you love. The same patience required to save money is the patience needed to build trust in a relationship. The same commitment that helps you exercise consistently also helps you remain calm during difficult conversations. Discipline does not change depending on the situation. It simply appears in different forms. This is why consistency matters so much. Every time you repeatedly choose actions that align with your values, you build trust. Other people begin trusting your words because your actions support them. More importantly, you begin trusting yourself. That quiet confidence affects every decision you make. Instead of constantly wondering whether you will follow through, you already know the answer because your daily habits have provided the evidence. Professional growth offers a clear example of this principle. Careers are rarely transformed by occasional bursts of effort. They are shaped by consistent learning, dependable performance, and the willingness to improve even when no one is watching. Showing up prepared, meeting commitments, learning new skills, and maintaining a high standard of work, may seem ordinary on any single day. Over months and years, however, these habits build a reputation that opportunities naturally follow. Success at work is often less about dramatic talent and more about dependable character. Financial stability grows in much the same way. Wealth is rarely created by one perfect investment or one lucky opportunity. More often, it is built through disciplined decisions repeated over long periods. Spending thoughtfully, saving consistently, avoiding unnecessary debt, and planning for the future may not provide immediate excitement, but they gradually create security and freedom. Financial discipline is ultimately the ability to choose lasting stability over temporary satisfaction. Health reflects this same pattern. A healthy body is not built by one excellent workout or one perfectly balanced meal. It develops through daily choices that are often too small to notice in the moment. Choosing nutritious food, moving regularly, getting enough sleep, managing stress, and allowing time for recovery become powerful because they are repeated consistently. Physical well-being also strengthens every other area of life by providing the energy, focus, and resilience needed to meet daily responsibilities. Relationships may be one of the clearest examples of discipline's hidden influence. Strong relationships are not sustained by grand gestures alone. They grow through consistent kindness, honest communication, reliability, and the willingness to be fully present. Remembering important conversations, listening carefully, keeping promises, and making time for the people who matter are all forms of discipline. Love often grows strongest through small acts performed consistently rather than dramatic moments performed occasionally. Emotional discipline becomes equally important during difficult seasons of life. Stress, disappointment, criticism, and conflict are unavoidable. The question is not whether challenging emotions will appear, but how you will respond when they do. Emotional discipline allows you to pause before reacting, speak thoughtfully instead of impulsively, and make decisions based on values rather than temporary frustration. It does not eliminate difficult emotions. It teaches you to guide them instead of being controlled by them. Time is another area where discipline quietly changes everything. Every person receives the same 24 hours each day, yet the difference lies in how those hours are invested. Disciplined people understand that every commitment is also a decision about what they cannot do during that same time. Because they recognize time as a limited resource, they spend it intentionally. They make room for meaningful work, personal growth, relationships, health, and recovery, instead of allowing every day to be controlled by distractions or constant urgency. One of the greatest benefits of discipline is that it becomes transferable. Once you learn how to remain consistent in one area of life, the same mindset naturally supports progress elsewhere. Someone who develops the habit of exercising regularly also learns persistence, planning, and follow-through. Those qualities often improve work performance, financial decision-making, and personal relationships as well. The specific habit may change, but the character behind it remains the same. This is why lifelong learning becomes such an important part of disciplined living. Disciplined people never assume they have reached the point where improvement is no longer necessary. They remain curious, open to feedback, and willing to develop new skills. They understand that growth is not a destination, but an ongoing process. Every new lesson expands their ability to contribute, solve problems, and create value for others. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about discipline is the belief that it limits freedom. At first glance, routines, commitments, and responsibilities may appear restrictive, yet the opposite is usually true. Discipline creates freedom because it reduces unnecessary chaos. Financial discipline creates freedom from constant money worries. Health discipline creates freedom to enjoy life with greater energy. Emotional discipline creates freedom from impulsive reactions. Time discipline creates freedom to focus on what truly matters. Rather than shrinking your life, discipline expands your possibilities. Consider Priya, who felt that every part of her life was slightly out of balance. Her work demanded long hours, her health had declined, her finances were disorganized, and she rarely had quality time with her family. She initially believed she needed separate solutions for each problem. Instead, she focused on becoming more disciplined in her daily routines. She began planning her week every Sunday evening, exercised for 30 minutes each morning, prepared healthy meals in advance, set aside money for savings before spending, limited unnecessary screen time after work, and protected one evening each week exclusively for her family. None of these habits produced dramatic results overnight, yet over the following year they transformed nearly every area of her life. Her health improved, her financial stress decreased, her work became more organized, and her relationships grew stronger. She did not become successful because she mastered one skill. She became successful because discipline spread naturally from one area of her life into the others. That is the quiet beauty of discipline. It refuses to remain confined to a single goal. Once it becomes part of your identity, it influences every decision, every relationship, every opportunity, and every challenge you encounter. It strengthens your ability to think clearly, act intentionally, and remain steady even when circumstances become difficult. The life you build is not the product of isolated achievements. It is the result of the standards you choose to live by every day. Discipline is one of those standards. It is not simply another habit to practice or another technique to master. It is a way of living that steadily strengthens your character, deepens your relationships, protects your future, and creates opportunities that impulsive living never could. The more consistently you live with discipline, the more you discover that its greatest reward is not only what it helps you achieve, it is the person it quietly helps you become. Chapter 12. Making discipline your identity. Every decision you make is quietly answering a question that few people ever stop to ask: who am I becoming? Long before other people notice changes in your life, your daily choices are shaping the way you see yourself. Each promise you keep, every responsibility you honor, and every action you repeat becomes evidence of your identity. Over time, those pieces of evidence grow stronger than your intentions, because the mind always believes repeated actions more than hopeful words. This is why lasting discipline cannot be built on behavior alone. Behaviors are often temporary when they exist without a deeper foundation. A person may exercise for a few weeks, wake up early for a month, or stay focused until motivation fades. If those actions never become part of how they see themselves, old habits eventually return. The behavior changes for a while, but the identity remains the same. Real transformation begins when the person changes first, and the behavior becomes a natural expression of that change. Identity is the invisible force behind consistency. It influences decisions long before conscious effort begins. Someone who believes they are careless will often act carelessly without realizing it. Someone who believes they are dependable naturally looks for ways to honor commitments. The mind constantly works to remain consistent with the story it believes about itself. That is why changing your identity is often more powerful than changing your goals. This does not mean pretending to be someone you are not. Identity is not created by repeating positive statements while ignoring your actions. The brain is persuaded by evidence. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you provide proof that you're becoming a disciplined person. Every time you choose growth over comfort, honesty over excuses, or consistency over convenience, you strengthen that identity. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like something you force because it becomes something you expect from yourself. Disciplined people rarely spend time wondering whether they feel motivated enough to act. Their standards have already answered that question. They have decided what kind of person they want to be, and their actions are guided by that decision. They exercise because they see themselves as someone who values health. They finish important work because they believe reliability is part of their character. They continue learning because growth has become part of their identity. Their habits are no longer negotiations. They are reflections of who they are. This way of living creates personal integrity. Integrity is the alignment between your values and your actions. It is built each time your behavior matches the standards you claim to believe in. Every promise you keep strengthens that alignment. Every time your actions consistently reflect your principles, you begin trusting yourself more deeply. That trust becomes one of the strongest sources of confidence a person can develop. Many people search for confidence by trying to feel differently. Discipline approaches confidence from the opposite direction. It understands that confidence grows through repeated evidence. You become confident in your ability to wake up early because you have done it consistently. You become confident in your work because you have repeatedly honored your commitments. You become confident in your character because your actions have proven that your values remain steady, even when life becomes difficult. This is also how self-respect develops. Self-respect is not built through achievements alone. It grows from knowing that your actions reflect your own standards. Every small commitment you honor tells your mind that your word matters. Every difficult decision made in alignment with your values quietly strengthens your relationship with yourself. Over time, this creates an inner stability that cannot easily be shaken by setbacks or temporary emotions. Of course, identity is never finished. Discipline does not create perfect people. It creates people who are committed to continual growth. They understand that improvement is an ongoing process rather than a destination. Mistakes still happen. Difficult seasons still arrive. Motivation still comes and goes. The difference is that these experiences no longer change the way disciplined people see themselves. They may stumble, but they do not question their commitment to becoming better. Protecting positive habits becomes especially important during those difficult seasons. Stress, disappointment, unexpected responsibilities, and personal challenges have a way of disrupting routines. A person whose discipline depends entirely on favorable circumstances often abandons healthy habits when life becomes complicated. Someone whose discipline is rooted in identity responds differently. They may adjust their routines temporarily, but they refuse to abandon the standards that define them. Their identity provides stability even when their schedule cannot. This kind of dependability extends beyond your relationship with yourself. Other people also begin recognizing the consistency of your character. They trust your words because your actions support them. They know you follow through because you have done so repeatedly. Dependability is one of the quiet rewards of disciplined living. It strengthens friendships, families, workplaces, and communities because people feel secure knowing they can rely on someone whose actions match their promises. Daniel's story reflects this transformation. For years, he described himself as someone who lacked discipline. He started projects with enthusiasm but rarely finished them. Whenever he failed to maintain a habit, he concluded that consistency simply was not part of his personality. Everything changed when he stopped trying to prove himself through dramatic goals and focused instead on changing the way he saw himself. He adopted one simple belief: I am someone who finishes what I begin. At first, the statement felt unfamiliar, so he supported it with small actions. He completed every task he planned for the day, even if it was simple. He arrived on time, kept personal commitments, and finished books instead of leaving them halfway. These actions were not impressive individually, but together they slowly changed his self-image. Within 2 years, he had completed a professional certification, improved his health, and started a successful consulting business. Looking back, Daniel realized that the greatest transformation was not what he achieved. It was the person he had become along the way. His experience reveals a truth that applies to every lasting change. Identity is never built by wishing, talking, or hoping. It is built by repeatedly acting like the person you intend to become until those actions no longer feel unusual. Every disciplined choice becomes another piece of evidence supporting a stronger identity. The goal is not to become someone who occasionally practices discipline when circumstances are favorable. The goal is to become someone for whom discipline is simply normal. When that happens, consistency no longer feels like a constant struggle because your habits are supported by your character instead of your emotions. The standards you have chosen quietly guide your decisions, even when no one is watching. That is the true power of identity. It transforms discipline from a temporary effort into a permanent way of living. When discipline becomes part of who you are, your actions naturally follow, your confidence steadily grows, and your future begins reflecting the person you have chosen to become. That realization prepares you for the final step of this journey, where all of these principles come together into a lifelong commitment to consistency, purpose, and self-mastery. Chapter 13. The Lifetime Commitment to Self-Mastery. Self-mastery is never earned once and kept forever. It is renewed through the choices you make every ordinary day. Every sunrise presents another opportunity to live according to your values or to drift toward convenience. That is what makes discipline both challenging and beautiful. It is not a finish line you eventually cross. It is a lifelong relationship with the person you are continually becoming. This truth changes the way we think about success. It is easy to believe that discipline is only necessary until we reach a certain goal. We imagine that once we build the business, improve our health, strengthen our finances, or achieve a lifelong dream, the hard work will somehow be finished. Life rarely works that way. Every achievement introduces new responsibilities, new opportunities, and new challenges. Growth does not eliminate the need for discipline. It simply gives discipline a different purpose. Throughout this book, one idea has appeared again and again from different angles. Motivation may inspire a beginning, but discipline creates a future. Motivation comes and goes with emotions. Discipline remains when emotions change. It shapes your mindset before it shapes your actions. It teaches you to value consistency over intensity, systems over willpower, responsibility over excuses, and progress over perfection. These principles are not isolated lessons. Together, they form a way of living. That way of living influences every part of your life. The discipline that helps you keep a work commitment is the same discipline that helps you stay patient during a difficult conversation. The consistency that strengthens your health also strengthens your finances because both depend on repeated decisions rather than isolated moments. The self-control that keeps you focused on meaningful work also helps you respond calmly under pressure. Discipline has a remarkable quality. Once it becomes part of your character, it naturally spreads into every area of your life. The journey towards self-mastery is also a journey of self-awareness. The more disciplined you become, the more honestly you begin to see yourself. You notice the habits that move you forward and the patterns that quietly hold you back. You become more aware of your emotional reactions, your excuses, your strengths, and your weaknesses. This awareness is not meant to create guilt. It creates clarity. You cannot intentionally improve a life you refuse to examine. With greater awareness comes greater responsibility. Instead of waiting for circumstances to improve, you begin asking how you can improve within your circumstances. Instead of allowing setbacks to define you, you allow them to teach you. Instead of expecting life to become easier, you become stronger. This shift is one of the greatest gifts discipline offers. It changes your relationship with challenges. Problems no longer appear as barriers placed in your path. They become opportunities to practice the very qualities you are trying to develop. There is another quality that quietly grows alongside discipline: humility. Disciplined people understand that they never know everything. They remain willing to learn because they recognize that growth has no final destination. Every season of life has lessons to teach. Every success reveals new responsibilities. Every failure offers wisdom that cannot be gained any other way. Humility keeps discipline alive because it reminds you that there is always another opportunity to improve. Change is another certainty that no amount of planning can avoid. Careers evolve, families grow, technology advances, health changes, priorities shift, and unexpected events reshape our plans. People who depend entirely on rigid routines often struggle when life changes around them. Those who build discipline into their character adapt without abandoning their principles. Their routines may change, but their commitment remains. They continue asking the same important question: what is the next right action I can take today? This flexibility is especially important during seasons of success. It is surprisingly easy to become disciplined when you are trying to escape failure. It can be much harder to remain disciplined after achieving your goals. Success sometimes creates comfort, and comfort can quietly weaken the habits that created success in the first place. Disciplined people understand that today's achievements are not permission to stop growing. They continue learning, practicing, and improving because discipline has become part of who they are, not merely a tool for reaching a destination. Patience also becomes increasingly valuable over a lifetime. We often underestimate what can be accomplished through consistent effort sustained over many years. Meaningful relationships, financial security, professional excellence, wisdom, strong character, and emotional resilience all develop gradually. They cannot be rushed. Every day of steady effort may feel ordinary, but ordinary days accumulate into extraordinary lives. This long-term perspective also changes the way you think about legacy. A meaningful legacy is rarely built through one unforgettable achievement. It is built through the values you consistently live, the promises you faithfully keep, the example you quietly set, and the lives you positively influence along the way, long after individual accomplishments are forgotten. Character continues, leaving its mark on family, friends, colleagues, and future generations. Discipline shapes not only what you achieve, but also the kind of impact you leave behind. Consider Elena, a school teacher who devoted more than 30 years to her profession. She never became famous, built a large company, or received widespread recognition. Yet, throughout her career, she maintained the same simple disciplines. She arrived prepared each morning, continued studying new teaching methods, treated every student with patience and respect, and ended each day reflecting on how she could improve. There were years filled with personal hardship, budget cuts, changing educational standards, and moments of exhaustion. Even so, she remained committed to her principles. Decades later, former students regularly returned to tell her how deeply she had influenced their confidence, careers, and lives. Her greatest achievement was not created by one extraordinary year. It was built through thousands of ordinary days lived with extraordinary consistency. Her discipline shaped not only her own life, but also the lives of countless others. Stories like Elena's remind us that self-mastery is measured less by dramatic accomplishments than by faithful consistency over time. The world often celebrates spectacular moments, yet those moments are almost always supported by years of quiet preparation. Lasting success belongs to people who continue showing up when the excitement has faded, when recognition is absent, and when progress seems almost invisible. Perhaps the greatest reward of lifelong discipline is not external success at all. It is the deep sense of peace that comes from living in alignment with your values. There is quiet confidence in knowing that your decisions are guided by principles rather than passing emotions. There is freedom in no longer depending on motivation to determine your actions. There is strength in becoming someone who can be trusted, especially by yourself. The search for shortcuts often promises faster results, but shortcuts rarely build lasting character. They may save time in the present while costing growth in the future. Discipline follows a different path. It accepts that meaningful change happens gradually, one decision at a time. It understands that greatness is not hidden inside extraordinary moments, but inside ordinary actions repeated with extraordinary consistency. As you leave this chapter, remember that tomorrow will not ask you to become perfect. It will simply ask you to make another choice, then another, and another after that. Those choices, repeated over months and years, will quietly shape your identity, your relationships, your opportunities, and your future. Self-mastery is never found in one remarkable act. It is discovered in the willingness to keep choosing what matters, day after day, regardless of how easy or difficult the journey becomes. Discipline is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming the kind of person who keeps moving forward, regardless of how they feel. That single commitment has the power to transform not only what you accomplish, but also who you become. And that is the journey that continues long after the final page of this book. Conclusion. Discipline is a choice you make every day. Change rarely arrives all at once. It begins quietly, often with a single decision that seems too small to matter. Throughout this book, you have explored a simple but life-changing truth. Lasting success is not built on the moments when you feel inspired. It is built on the moments when you choose to move forward anyway. Every chapter has pointed back to the same foundation, that the life you create is shaped far more by your daily choices than by your temporary emotions. By now, you know that motivation has an important place, but it was never meant to carry the weight of your future. It can give you the courage to begin, but only discipline can help you continue when life becomes busy, difficult, or uncertain. Discipline allows you to build habits that last, stay committed during setbacks, make thoughtful decisions under pressure, and become someone who can be trusted to follow through. It transforms hope into action, action into consistency, and consistency into a life of purpose. As you move forward, resist the temptation to wait for the perfect moment. There will always be reasons to delay, distractions competing for your attention, and days when progress feels slower than you hoped. None of those moments define you. What defines you is your willingness to take the next right step, even when it feels small. Every disciplined choice is an investment in the person you are becoming, and those investments quietly grow over time. There will also be days when you fall short of your own expectations. That is part of every meaningful journey. Do not measure your life by isolated mistakes or temporary setbacks. Measure it by your commitment to return, to learn, and to continue. Discipline has never been about flawless performance. It has always been about faithful persistence. Every time you begin again, you strengthen your character and remind yourself that your future is not decided by yesterday's disappointment, but by today's decision. The pages of this book may be coming to an end, but the real work begins with the choices you make after closing it. You do not need extraordinary talent, perfect circumstances, or endless confidence to create a meaningful life. You need the willingness to honor your commitments, protect your values, and keep moving forward one day at a time. That decision is always available to you, regardless of where you are or what yesterday looked like. Your future is being written by the habits you repeat, the promises you keep, and the standards you choose to live by. Choose discipline when comfort calls. Choose growth when fear whispers. Choose consistency when motivation fades. Those quiet decisions, made day after day, will shape a life of strength, purpose, and self-mastery, far beyond what temporary inspiration alone could ever achieve. Motivation may open the door, but discipline is the path that carries you all the way to the life you are capable of creating.